Take that. Take that, Dementors.
I'm just kidding.
Okay.
To create this costume, you will need 1 mask, a half a yard of white felt, 4 8x10 sheets of very soft white felt, 1 yard of boning, a 1/4 yard of this fluttery taffeta or faux fur, a half a yard of white sequined mesh or other preference, a half a yard of crystal beaded trim, your choice of white clothing. I used a white t-shirt and capris, but I think a more whimsical dress would look great as well, and 6 4 to 6 inch pieces of decorative molding like you see here. To begin, I created my Patronus mask. I used an old mask we'd previously bought from Zerkers. After painting it with white gesso, I allowed the mask to dry for 24 hours. Then, using a palette knife, I covered the mask in modeling paste to create a more rustic texture. I allowed the paste to dry completely, then sanded it until it was smooth, and finally painted the mask with pearl iridescent acrylic paint. Next, I took my 6 pieces of decorative molding and painted them with white gesso. I allowed them to dry and then painted them again with white acrylic paint. When the pieces were completely dry, I arranged 3 of them into a Y shape to look like an antler. I did the same with the last 3 until I had 2 antlers. Then I hot glued the antlers together. After the hot glue was dry, I glued each antler to the top corner of either side of my mask. Since the molding was made out of wood, the antlers weren't too heavy and they stayed put really well. Finally, I took my crystal trim and hot glued it to the bottom corner of either side of my mask. And that's how I created my Patronus mask. Next, I created a pattern for my stand-up collar. I did this by drawing a small half circle for my neck and then measured out 8 inches from the center of that circle and drew another larger half circle that tapered toward the collar points. I then broke half of my collar into 4 separate pieces.
I'm going to go ahead and cut out the stand-up part of the collar.
Using a fabric pencil, I traced each piece twice onto my 8x10 pieces of stiff white felt and then cut them out.
Okay, so I've got all my pieces for my collar cut out. I'm going to just lay those out and pin them together.
When I finished, I had 8 pieces in all to sew together.
Okay, so I've got this collar is all done. This is what it looks like. And then I've cut out this extra piece that's almost shaped exactly the same, but I'm going to sew it on like this. And it's going to kind of act as a stabilizer for it. So, and also help me to build the kind of the stag beard of my costume to it. And it'll also allow me a stable place to stick the boning to help the collar stand up. So I'm going to pin that together and sew it together, and then we'll see where we're at after this is done. Okay, so I've sewn the collar on, and I've sewn it with the right sides facing each other. And now I'm going to take it and I'm going to turn it around so that this part goes back behind my collar and helps the collar stand up like this. Alright, so now from here I need to make a sort of bib on the front of it so that I have a place to start attaching the stag beard. And so I'm going to draw a pattern for that, and I'm going to use the same fabric as I've used on this back here, and then we're going to put it all together. I'll show you that when I'm done. Okay, so I've got my piece here, and I'm going to make it a little bit round here around the neck because I don't want it to be so tight that I can't get my head in. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull that back in half and just kind of round it out a little bit, because it's just kind of a base to attach. It's like a bib to attach everything else to. And so I'm going to pin this together and see how far I need that collar to come in order to get it over my head, because I don't want to have to do buttons or anything like that. I just want it all to kind of just be one piece that I can just slip over my head when I'm ready. And I think that I'm probably going to have to do something more back here. Okay, so I just want to sew these two places right here. It still fits over my head, but it makes the collar stand up better and gives me enough to work with to attach the beard. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew that on. Okay, now on these open edges right here, I'm just gonna go ahead and put on one of my quilting settings and just quilt that edge over so we don't have any kind of fraying. Okay, so now I'm going to make a little casing for the boning, and I'm just going to do that by just sewing this strip on the back of my stand-up collar, and then I'm going to just slip the boning inside of there. Pin these down so that the boning stays where I need it to stay while I sew these little casings closed. I'm going to start by going just around the edge right here. Okay, so that looks like it's opening up pretty well. Go ahead and trim off these edges right here. Okay, so the collar turned out really nice. The beard here, and I'm going to attach it to this portion of the bib, and we'll go ahead and pull out this really pretty taffeta that I've got here. And what I want to do with the taffeta is I want it to look, you know, kind of like fur, right?
At this point, I decided to add a small shoulder cape made from the half yard of sequined netting. I was in a really big hurry though, so I simply pinned the lengthy edge of the netting to the stabilizer and bib and sewed it around really fast. It looked really sloppy, unfortunately. A neater way to do this would be to cut an extra short circle skirt from the netting and sew it on. If you don't know how to make a circle skirt, I've attached the link to a great tutorial on how to do that below. Hey everybody, so I wanted to show you the final product of the deer beard and stand-up collar. I did make a few changes that aren't on the video that I wanted to tell you about quickly. So I didn't finish the costume before the party, and so while I was wearing it, I wore it anyway. I just didn't finish it all the way, so it was finished enough to be able to wear it. But there were a few things about it that really bugged me while I was wearing it, so I changed or added a few things. First of all, I also sewed on just to the front collar here, just sewed this onto the bib, this pretty taffeta fabric here. Now, when I was at the party, though, my collar kept on flapping back. And so you saw me just add 3 pieces of boning. So I went in and I added a piece of boning to every seam of that collar. So do the exact same thing, just add a piece of boning to each of them. And what I did is I staggered it where with the boning, your boning's going to curl. And so one piece I would curl in, the next piece I would do the boning curled out, curled in, curled out. And it kind of just makes it stand up really nice like that. The last thing that I did is that to help it stand up is I also added, do you see that casing right there? I added another set of casing just like the casing that I did up here, and then I put a piece of boning all the way around the collar to give it some more stability to stand up, and now it stands up really well. The last thing I did is that I folded the collar over the bib right here, and then I just tacked it down so that that helps also keep the collar up, but it also finishes off this area right here so that it doesn't look so raw as it will look when you just attach the taffeta to the bib. So anyway, I hope you love it, and we'll see you guys soon.